Congressman Alan Grayson from Florida. Great to have you back on the program, Congressman.
Thanks. We're literally between votes. We have 2 votes today on the floor of the House. I just did one. They could call the other one at any minute.
So let's get to it then.
I got a tough choice to make. Do I entertain your listeners to the best of my humble capability, or do I carry out my constitutional duties? What do you think I should do?
Let's entertain first, then we'll get to constitutional duties. First, real quick then. Everybody's celebrating this health care bill. I know you're in favor of it, but
well,
I don't see...
Not everybody. I mean, you know, there are people who actually are against health care. I actually heard them chanting outside the Capitol yesterday. No health care. No health care. No health care. So I think those people are experiencing bitter disappointment right now.
Now, I hear you, and I'm not on that side, but I am very worried that we have no cost controls in this bill. What is to stop the insurance companies from, the minute the bill is signed, or 6 months after it's signed, or 18 months after it's signed, to say, hey, you know what, your rates just went up 20%, 50%, 100%?
Well, look, if I believe that if they could raise their rates by 20% or 50% or 100%, they would have done it already. They're utterly unscrupulous. They charge you whatever they can get away with. They give you as little care as possible, and they call the difference profit. I don't think that this bill is going to change that.
So if it doesn't change it, why are we celebrating?
Oh, because it does change other things. One thing that it changes is that it prevents insurance companies from denying people coverage or care on account of pre-existing conditions. Another thing that it does is that it prevents the insurance companies from literally pulling the plug on you once you reach a certain dollar amount in payments that they make to providers. Another thing that it does is it provides subsidies to enormous numbers of people, up to $88,000 a year in income. If people who have up to $88,000 a year in family income for a family of 4, to help them to afford health insurance. It also eliminates the donut hole for people on Medicare. And it happens to reduce the deficit by $4,000 for every single man, woman, and child in this country.
Congressman Grayson.
And it saves lives. I mean, that's why I voted for it. The fundamental reason why I voted for it is because it extends insurance to people who don't have it, and therefore will save lives.
Congressman Grayson, I wholly agree with you that it covers more people, right? And that is a terrific thing, and I just talked about how I think that's the great side of this bill. But if the majority of Americans see their prices increase again, haven't we raised their expectations too much? Isn't this kind of a mission accomplished moment? And then they see the bill.
There are reasons why you would expect the opposite to happen. Now, let me explain that. Look, I do not have my my crystal ball with me today. I can't gaze into the future with absolute certainty. My Super 8 ball is back in Orlando, and I'm in D.C. But there are reasons to think that the opposite would happen, and people who have been objectively looking at this carefully agree that there's reasons to think that premiums would not go up. They might actually go down. One reason for that is that the insurance companies are no longer going to have to pay for other people's emergency room care. That's an important difference. On the average, $1,000 a year in everyone's family policy comes from simply having to pay for other people's care. When they don't have coverage, they walk into an emergency room. Somebody's going to have to pay for that. And it ends up being the other people who do have insurance. So those people who have insurance are likely to pay less on account of the fact they're no longer paying for the people who don't have insurance.
I do have my crystal ball. As long as the insurance companies are in charge, the rates will go up, not down. So I think that's a huge political problem for the Democrats.
Well, that's why I think it's really important to pass my Medicare That You Can Pay For Act, H.R. 4789.
See,
and I want you to know that I pay attention. I notice these things. I noticed that when you discussed the introduction of that bill, the video of you explaining that bill was actually the number 2 news video on YouTube that day.
I know, and I love that bill that you introduced, and that's why we talked about it, and I think that's why people responded to it, and that's why people are responding to your website, congressmanwithguts.com. I know you got a money bomb coming up on March 27th. It resonates with people, right? I get that. But they're not going to go to it, are they? I mean, because that's the next question. Because, all right, so
look, we got 80
this.
co-sponsors in the House in 1 week. We got 40,000 people to sign our petition at WeWantMedicare.com. I had 2 members of the leadership tell me this week, I'm not talking about freshmen, I'm talking about 2 members of the leadership here in the House tell me this week that they predicted that within 3 years that bill will be law. And I'm hoping it's 3 months, not 3 years. That's why I keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Because we do need insurance. We need competition against the insurance companies. And we've got something that stretches from sea to shining sea, the Medicare provider network that's only available to 1/8 of the population. We let the insurance companies compete against Medicare in the Medicare Advantage program. Why can't we let Medicare compete against the insurance companies for the remaining 7/8 of the country?
So now that leads perfectly into that financial discussion. You want to audit the Fed. That already passed the House with overwhelming bipartisanship, the only thing that's gotten bipartisanship. It goes over to the Senate side, and today we find out, oh, by the way, the New York Fed was buying garbage, toxic assets from Lehman right before they went under. I think the guy in charge was Tim Geithner. And, of course, the administration and the Senate don't want to audit the Fed. So how do we get beyond that problem?
I think people realize that there's a funny smell in the air. In fact, it stinks all the way to the Canadian border. You know, they're showing almost every day now that there's a need to audit them in all sorts of different ways. We found out today that by their own rules, they have to release the transcripts of their proceedings of the Federal Open Market Committee 5 years afterward. It's been 7 years since they released any. You'd think that 5 years would be enough, but now they're going on. It's 7 years since we've seen the minutes. There's something funny going on. Everybody knows it. We just have to get to the bottom of it.
Well, so here comes a critical question on the financial side. So when Geithner said to Lehman Brothers, yeah, I'll take your toxic assets off your hands and I'll overpay you for them, okay? Well, where did that money come from? Because my understanding was that Congress was supposed to be able to control the money of the United States taxpayers. Did Geithner just print that money? Is that our money? Whose money is it?
But I mean, whenever they print the money, they do it by cheapening every dollar in your pocket, every dollar in your bank account, and every dollar in your 401k. That's what it means to create money. When you increase the money supply, you're cheapening the value of every other dollar in existence.
So they printed money and they gave it to Lehman Brothers, and they went bankrupt, and those toxic assets are nearly useless. And now Geithner, of course, is going to tell us that, no, we should investigate whether others have done that. And I guarantee you they have.
I've been saying this since day one. 2 years ago, the Fed had a really clean balance sheet. Their assets consisted of treasuries, and it was the simplest balance sheet imaginable. Now they've spent 2 years doing special favors for people like Lehman, their pals, always their pals on Wall Street. And the result of that is that their balance sheet is now cluttered with garbage, and they refuse to let anybody know even what's on it, much less what it's worth. And there's been gross violations of the law in the process. The Fed is not supposed to accept assets that are below investment-grade assets. In Lehman's case, what they did is they created assets that they knew they couldn't sell to anyone else. They didn't even attempt to market them to anyone else. There's notations on the documents themselves that say that. And they knew that they could stick it to the Fed because, honestly, the taxpayer is the sucker of last resort. That's how they look at it on Wall Street.
As I see that over and over again, I think we need an absolute political revolution in this country. Because, and I don't mean it in the right-wing way where they encourage people to do crazy things. I mean a political one. Because right now the Senate is totally bought and paid for, and honestly, so is the Treasury Department.
You're seeing it. You're seeing it. I'm the first Democrat to represent downtown Orlando in 34 years. And I won in a district that was gerrymandered 4 Republicans against a 4-term incumbent. And look at how we're raising money. You mentioned the money bomb this Saturday at congressmanwithguts.com. People are going by the thousands to make pledges to us. We are changing the way America does business. We are taking Washington, D.C. back from the lobbyists, one $50 contribution at a time. I've gotten over 20,000 people who've made contributions to our campaign because they know I can either spend my time investigating Wall Street or I can spend my time groveling before lobbyists begging them for $5,000 checks. You decide. Which one should I be doing with my time?
I couldn't agree more. The problem is not all the Democrats, not even close to all them. Most of the Democrats are not on board. Let's put it that way.
No, I mean, we're establishing a new model. People are going to see it might take a little bit of time, but I had a Democrat in my office earlier today asking me, how do you do this? Just tell me how to do it. I want to be a congressman like you.
Well, that's definitely encouraging. I hope they go in that direction. And you got to fight money with money to some degree, and I'm very practical and realistic about that. But,
well, of course,
but Tim Geithner's
Citibank, Goldman Sachs, any of these people, thanks to the Supreme Court's decision, can peel off $5 million and drop it in negative advertising on my head 2 weeks before the election. we have to be prepared for that. We have at least a $2 million race. We've got only $1 million in contributions. We need to get it done. And this money bomb at congressmanwithguts.com is how we're getting it done.
All right, finally, I got to ask you, I think Tim Geithner is an absolute cancer, and I think he's as guilty as anyone about this collapse, not regulating, giving the bankers all the money. He's still over at the Obama administration, and as long as he's there, all these unsolved problems are going to blow. They're going to blow up in our face, and certainly in the Democratic Party's face. How do you change that in the limited time you have before that bomb goes off?
We'll see. I do think that the president is getting way too much advice from people who are friendly to Wall Street. But in the end, what doesn't matter is if you're friendly to Wall Street or antagonistic to Wall Street. What matters is if you actually do good things for people. And when I know that a few weeks ago the president made headlines because it sounded like he was attacking Wall Street. But whether he's attacking Wall Street or buddying up with Wall Street, doesn't matter. What matters is that the people in this country need to be able to get credit when they need to buy a car, when they need to buy a house, when they need it for their small businesses. And in the end, it doesn't matter whether you're angry at Wall Street or whether you're happy-faced about Wall Street. What matters is the lives of ordinary people. And that's the ticking time bomb here. We are going to run out at some point, and middle-class existence in America will be gone unless we defend it.
All right, Representative Alan Grayson from Florida. The website is congressmanwithguts.com. Thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks.
Anytime, anytime. I read those comments. I watch what you do, and you're part of the community of people who care.
All right, thank you so much.
Watch the live show at theyoungturks.com.